In 1990, a remarkable material appeared on the BBC Science and Technology programme, Tomorrow's World.
I'm going to leave this torch blowing on this egg for a couple of minutes, and it ought to survive the inferno because it's coated with a remarkable new plastic.
The substance appeared to have incredible heat-resistant properties.
The egg hasn't even begun to start cooking.
Its apparent uses were countless.
The test that I in fact did indicated that it was better than in fact anything else that I'd seen.
Big industry was soon clamouring to discover more about this wonder product. The material, christened Starlite, was all the more miraculous as its creator, Maurice Ward, a ladies' hairdresser from the northeast of England, had no formal chemical training.
He'd stumbled on a wonderful invention. It wasn't through being a sophisticated scientist.
It's incredible that this material just painted on could be so powerful.
Despite huge interest from NASA, Boeing and the Ministry of Defence, Starlite never left the laboratory.
No, we don't supply you the formulation.
Maurice died in 2011 without ever revealing the formula. But did Starlite's secrets die with him? Was Starlite nothing more than an intriguing party trick? Or could this apparently incredible material still save countless lives? Maurice and Starlite first came to my attention back in June 2010. He phoned me up out of the blue, saying he had a solution to the BP oil crisis in the Gulf of Mexico. I was a rookie reporter at the time covering local issues, but there was something about Maurice and his story that really grabbed me. Intrigued, I set off to meet him to find out more.
I'm just an inventor that plays around, and I do it quite different to the normal sort of person.
That product was Starlite, a material that looks and feels like a combination of metal and plastic, and, says its creator, can withstand 75 nuclear blasts.
We did it with an egg on Tomorrow's World. Although it looked red hot, he could pick it up with his bare hands, and that of course created a great deal of interest around the world.
That would be my sole encounter with Maurice. I left his workshop on the family farm wondering if his claims added up. Who was this mysterious figure and how did he come to discover Starlite? Tell us about Maurice then, your dad. What was he like?
A very eccentric man, liked his own way, had a mind of his own and nobody could tell him. A lot of people didn't get on with him because I think the way he was.
Well, Maurice was because he was a very elegant looking chap. White hair, white beard, turned out nicely. I was very fond of Maurice. He had a complicated character which was engaging to people like me. To some extent he was an otherworldly sort of character.
After short spells in the police and at a chemical firm, Maurice opened a ladies' hair salon.
He started off in hairdressing and he was very successful. He did Paul Daniels' hair and lots of other people, travelled the world, brought colouring and permanent to the country in the 60s.
You know, Maurice was a terrific showman and he loved being the centre of attention.
As a hairdresser, it's said Ward often referred to himself as Maurice of Paris.
And while he was doing hairdressing, he used to make his own wigs. And because he used to do all the fibres for the hair, I think this is where the scientist stuff came in.
Maurice had an interest in chemicals and materials and tinkered in his makeshift lab. But it was a tragic accident that would focus his mind.
The worst British air disaster for 13 years. 54 people are killed at Manchester Airport, trapped in a burning plane.
There was that big aviation disaster in Manchester. A lot of people were killed and people died from fumes, not from the fire itself. And so Maurice was trying to come up with a product which would deal with that.
He was burning rubbish in his back garden, and he happened to in fact notice that part of it didn't burn. It just did not burn, so he tried to use oxy-gas torches and it still didn't burn.
So Maurice essentially discovered Starlite completely by accident?
He discovered a potential version of it completely by accident, yes.
Maurice took his wonder material to the television programme Tomorrow's World. The broadcast was pivotal in sparking the interest that quickly grew. Peter McCann is the presenter who conducted the test.
That's the old music that set the pulse rating.
I was presenting the Tomorrow's World programme, which was the BBC's flagship science programme throughout the 80s, really. On the actual day of the performance, we would go through the script and we would see how it turned out. It was with some trepidation that I went over there and gingerly fingered it to start with to see if I was going to get scalded and blistered as I picked this thing up. But to my amazement, it really was pretty cool. It was still warm, but it was not red hot like it had been a few seconds before. So on the actual take, I was able to go to it with fair confidence that I could just pick it up straight away. But that wasn't the case on the rehearsal, I can tell you.
What's more, the egg hasn't even begun to start.
It was raw inside. Amazing. It was just jaw-dropping. Maurice was a very secretive sort of person. I said to him, "What is in this product?" And he said, "I've never told anybody yet, and I'm not likely to tell you."
We've come to London today to meet with Mark Miodownik. Now, he's a materials scientist and engineer at University College London. He's a bit of a professor of stuff, and he's got a bit of a history with Starlite. He's done tests on it in the past, and we're going to ask him what properties Starlite has that makes it so resistant to extreme heat.
Oh yeah, here we go.
In 2012, Maurice's daughters brought Starlite to Mark's lab.
Yeah, this is an exciting moment. My first real test of Starlite in my own lab. I just didn't know what to expect.
What is Starlite?
The Starlite is a paint, like a white viscous liquid. Once it's set hard, if you apply a heat, and we applied a blowtorch to it, the material itself chars and becomes carbon, and it then becomes this expanding foam of carbon. Now, carbon is a very high melting point material. It's incredibly thermally resistant, and so you have this very low density foam made of a very high temperature resistant material, and it happens very quickly. So it's a kind of magic material. It's a thin paint, but then it becomes quite a thick, chunky insulator material. But look at that. I mean, you know, a material that can withstand a blowtorch for that period of time, it's an impressive material.
Maurice's masterstroke of taking Starlite onto Tomorrow's World soon attracted the attention of companies and governments. 18 months after appearing on the programme, the Ministry of Defence convinced the inventor to allow them to run a series of tests.
One of the nice points about being in science, often you in fact go down on the beach, you in fact turn over rocks, and then suddenly something's underneath those rocks that's quite different. Starlite was very, very different. I was the kind of guy, I guess, that they used to come to and ask, how does this work? What makes it tick, as it were?
Keith was particularly interested in how Starlite would perform against high-powered lasers.
What was interesting is it changed only down to the depth that it needed to deal with the heat pulse that was put on it. The bigger the heat pulse, the better Starlite worked. Initially, he would in fact want to come and be there whilst tests were in fact done. Later on, he, I think, gave me samples which he in fact left in my care, provided I could take them back to him afterwards. But he knew that I didn't actually analyse them.
The MOD test results showed Starlite was something they hadn't seen before, and now NATO was also interested. It wanted to know if Starlite could withstand a nuclear explosion. Further tests were carried out at the Atomic Weapons Establishment in Foulness in the UK and the White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico.
Some of the tests that were done, they used a 4 kiloton simulant.
Is it nuclear blast resistant?
It's thermal blast resistant, if it doesn't get torn to bits.
How serious was the MOD about Starlite?
I think we knew at the time that it was a game changer overall. The test that I in fact did also indicated that it was better than in fact anything else that I'd in fact seen.
Starlite had great potential. Government agencies and businesses were queuing up to work with Maurice, but would he be willing to share his secret with them? Morris had produced a material that appeared to have numerous applications. Military, industry, even space travel were all possibilities. Why have we not heard more of this, so-called miraculous substance?
It's a very different skill set, inventing a material, or in fact accidentally inventing a material and building a business out of it. Those are in a sense two completely separate things, and I think he either couldn't do the second thing or he didn't have someone around whom he trusted to do the second thing, and so it became just a curiosity, this material, because it never made the leap into a commercial material.
The agreements, I haven't seen any one of the agreements.
No, I've brought you.
Okay, I like to see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk to the attorneys and see what they have to.
But, we've got to have the agreements in place.
Yes.
All we're saying really is that I'm protecting my material and you ain't going to pinch it. That's all. No, that's all it's saying.
I know,
really.
exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
He was also reluctant to tell people what was actually in Starlite.
Because they wanted to steal it. And if he'd give them the information, my dad being nobody, he had no protection, they could just say, well, they manufactured it, they invented it. He used to play mind games with people. He used to have different bits of ingredients laid around, but it wouldn't be the proper stuff because he didn't trust anyone.
Trust was a huge stumbling block then.
He wanted it to help people, but he wanted the control as well.